This video is sponsored by Exter.
Well, I did it again, but this time I spent my own money. I spent over $180 on woodworking products from Temu. So let me tell you about my experience and see if I can recommend any of these higher end products from Temu.
So buying from Temu is always a crapshoot. You never know when you're going to get those products and if you're going to even be able to use them. And that's because you're dealing with lower quality Chinese manufacturers and all the items need to go through customs. So it can take well over a week and sometimes as much as a month. And in my case, I got two packages. The first package I got within a couple of days and the second package I got about 9 days later. But that's not always the case. If you check out my previous video on Temu, you'll notice that I got a lot of different packages at different times. In fact, I even got one package with half of a product in one shipment and the other half about a month and a half later. In my previous video, I got all my items for free and it was $180 worth of product. But in this video, I spent my own money and I spent almost the exact same amount at $187. So now I've got some real skin in the game. For my last video, I rated each item either with a Chinese clap or Chinese crap. But for today's video, we're gonna do something a little bit different.
I'm gonna rate them Temu cause I love steak or Tay-Poo cause that's not as good as steak.
And that should tell you something, as I don't think there's anything Bert likes more than steak, and I know that he hates poo, even though he smells like it sometimes.
You just earned my first rating, Tay-Poo for you. I never knew I was a poet.
That may be one of the nicer things you've said to me. So let's get into it and take a look at what we got from Temu. So as I said before, I spent $187 for all of these items, and I got a total of 8 items. Surprisingly, all of these items look like they came from Colombia. My first concern has to do with the second package I received. As you can see, one of the items is sticking through the packaging and it's just been taped over. Now this is kind of like Christmas morning, as it's been so long since I ordered these items that I've kind of forgotten what I ordered. And I believe this first item that I got is a router accessory. So let's open it up and see what we got. So some of my memories from ordering from Temu are starting to come back, as you can see, the packaging on the first item is damaged, but none of that really matters as long as the tool isn't damaged. But luckily, inside the packaging, you can see it's pretty well protected. So let's take this out of the package and see what it actually is. So inside the box, it appears that I got everything that I need in order to assemble this tool. But what is this tool? Well, that's a great question. Luckily, I remembered what this tool was, and it's actually a jig to help me cut juice grooves into my cutting boards. But there's absolutely no instructions on how to assemble this jig, so I had to go back to the website and take a look at this picture here to figure out how to put this thing together. So with a little bit of a headache assembling this tool, I'll have to say once it's assembled, this thing feels pretty high quality. If we take a closer look at this jig, you can see that each wing has a bolt that's attached to a strip to metal that slides right into that T-slot. On 2 of the strips, you'll notice some metric measurements that help you align this jig so that you can make sure you're completely square. Now, I probably wouldn't entirely rely on those scales, but instead use a square just to make sure that all your corners are perfectly square. Now, one thing I would suggest before you use this jig is you definitely want to clamp this down to your workpiece just to make sure that it doesn't move on you. So here I've got a couple of clamps just to secure the jig to this scrap piece of plywood that we're going to cut a cove into. Now this jig does come with some clamps you can buy for it, but I didn't purchase those because I already have some clamps, just not enough. And this brings me to a word of caution when purchasing things like this jig on Temu. If you look at the website, you'll see from this picture here, it appears that you're actually getting the jig. But instead, this is the price just for those clamps. So you really need to be careful reading the description of what you're actually adding to your cart so that you get what you want and not something you don't need. So let's move forward and attempt to cut a juice groove in this beautiful plywood cutting board with the cove bit that I have installed in this router. Well, I have to be honest, I'm pretty impressed with the results of this jig. This thing did exactly what it's supposed to. You can see we have nice crisp lines and everything is equidistant from the jig, which is exactly what we're looking for. So in my opinion, I'm going to give this a Temu, but let's get our expert opinion from Bert.
Tay spam. I just remembered I like spam better than steak.
I guess that's good. Well, let's move on to our next package. Before we do that, let's have a word from our sponsor, Ekster. So you may have noticed every time I sit a little crooked. And that's because, just like you, I'm still sporting a fat Costanza wallet. But recently, I've finally gotten with the times and got a beautiful Parliament wallet from Ekster. Not only has this wallet completely changed the profile of my wallet, but it's also allowed me to finally sit up straight. It's nice. These wallets have an amazing ability to access all of your credit cards with just a simple press of a button. Not only that, but these wallets can instantly be turned into a smart wallet. By adding accessories like the solar-powered tracker card, you can be assured you'll never lose your wallet again. Not only that, but you can ring your wallet from your phone or vice versa. You can also get notified when you leave your wallet behind. You can use your phone to find your wallet on a map, and this tracker has 3 hours of solar charge that lasts 2 full months. Not to mention, it's voice activated using Siri, Alexa, or Google. And right now, Ekster is having an anniversary sale, giving 30% off these beautiful wallets. But if you use my link and my coupon code of FlynnDog, you'll get 35% off these beautiful wallets. So if you're looking for an environmentally friendly, thin-profiled wallet that blocks RFID as well as holds 12 cards plus cash, check out this Ekster wallet. So click the link below or the link in the description to not only get 30% off on their anniversary sale, but an extra 5%, making a total of 35% off using the coupon code FlynnDog. Thanks again to Ekster for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to that second Temu package. So this second package is one that I'm concerned about. It's obviously busting at the seams and I'm expecting some damage. But just like the last one, maybe it's protected. So let's dig into it. Well, I think I figured out what was sticking out of that package. Let's take a look. That orange bit that we saw sticking out of the package had to do with this ruler, and as we take it out of the package, you can see it's bent like a banana. Now, using just a little bit of elbow grease, I was able to straighten out that ruler, but it goes to show that this isn't the highest quality ruler you can get. Now, if we look at the ruler, you can see it has imperial on one side as well as metric on the other, so it's nice to have both measurement systems in one tool. Now, the reason that I got this should be easy to understand. This is obviously an alternative to the Polini pocket rule. If we slide this ruler into the sleeve, you can see that it instantly becomes very similar to that Polini pocket rule. But there is a small difference to this design, which is what I found quite intriguing. And this feature has everything to do with stability. As we all know with the Polini pocket rule, it's got a very small lip and it can be hard to keep your ruler straight. But with this new tool, it's got an 1.5 inch support and an L shape that gives you a lot of support for that ruler. And I'll have to say that extra overhang really does make a big difference. It really makes that ruler very stable, allowing you to easily scribe lines. But we go back to that ruler issue. I don't think this is the best ruler for the job, so let's see if we can switch it out with a higher quality ruler. And surprisingly, the answer is yes. By loosening the 2 screws on the side, you can adjust it so that you can add thicker rulers. So I'm going to switch that ruler out with an old ruler from a Swanson combination square and see if that works any better. And as to be expected, this is a much more sturdy tool with the new ruler. So let's get the verdict from our resident expert, Bert.
You switch out the ruler and all your new tools?
No, not usually.
Tay crap then.
It's Tay poo, not Tay crap.
Same thing.
All right, Tay crap. Before we move on to our next one, Bert and I ask you to do us a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and leave us a comment. It really does help out our small woodworking channel. Also, just like we do with all of our videos, I'll leave links in the description below for all of these Temu products. If I can't find them on Temu, I'll leave Amazon equivalents. Lastly, if you haven't already, check out my new website, www.FlynnDogWoodwork.com. That's www.FlynnDogGwoodwork.com. There you can find shop updates as well as plenty of tool recommendations and other ways that you can support our channel. Not to mention we have a lot of fun woodworking accessories that I think you and your family might enjoy. So check out the new website, www.flinndogwoodwork.com. Now let's get back to the video. So we got a Temu and a Taepoo so far. Well, I guess it's Tay crap. Let's dig into our third item and see how well it does. So the third item I got is something that I've been wanting to get for a long time, and it's all about calibration. But not just any calibration. Calibration of probably one of the most important tools in our shop, and that is the table saw. This tool should be able to allow me to calibrate both my table saw fence as well as my blade. So let's dig into the box and see what we got. So this is one of the few boxes that came undamaged, and inside the box you'll find a table saw gauge. And surprisingly, this actually has some instructions. So my first impressions with this tool is it feels fairly high quality. All the pieces are made out of metal, and once things are tightened down, there's no slop at all. If we look at the construction of this tool, you'll notice there's a little metal knob on top that allows you to adjust the miter bar that's on the very back. If we look at the front of the tool, you'll also notice the gauge. And if we depress the metal tip, you can see how much that dial moves with very little movement. You'll also notice there's measurements to adjust the miter bar both for imperial as well as metric. If we look at the gauge itself, you can see there's a smaller dial that goes from 0 to 10 millimeters. If we look at the larger dial, you can see this has increments of 1/100th of a millimeter. To use this, we can simply slide it into one of our miter slots, and you can see there's no slop at all with this tool. Then we can adjust our fence until it hits the very tip of the tool. Once we have our fence locked into place, we then can take some measurements with this tool. By sliding this tool down the miter slot, you can see very small differences between the distance between the miter slot and the fence of your table saw. And by sliding this tool down the length of your fence, you can get any variance from square of your fence. And in my case, my fence has a variance of about 40/100ths of a millimeter, and I'm not even sure if that's any good, but I will make some adjustments to tighten it down. Another way to use this tool is to place it into the other miter slot and test the variance of your blade to that miter slot. And I'll have to say I'm very pleased with how little of a variance I'm getting as I rotate my blade. So what I take from those two readings is my blade appears to be calibrated, but my fence could use a little bit of an adjustment, so that's what I'll do. But the real advantage that I see with this tool is the price, as this costs less than $30, and if you look at many comparable tools, they can cost well over $100. Which is something that I'm not willing to pay for a tool that I'm not going to use that often. But let's get our final decision from our boy Bert.
Tay summer sausage.
Does that mean Temu because it's meat?
Sausage.
We'll go with Temu on that one. Next up, let's check out a measuring and marking tool that I got simply because I had never seen a design like that, and it's in this white bag. So inside this bag, we have a weird looking red tool that looks like it needs to be assembled, which is great because there isn't any instructions. So once again, I had to dig back into Temu to see what the heck this thing's supposed to look like, and I finally found a picture of it, and here's a picture of how it's supposed to be assembled. So I'm always a little bit wary of any square that I need to put together. So one of the first things that we're going to do is test for square. So this is such a unique design that I'm not even quite sure how to test for square, but we're going to try it anyway. I think if I flip it around, I can do it right here. And that looks pretty good. So now that we're fairly confident that this thing is square, let's take a look at its design. As you can see, it's got a lot of angles and a lot of holes in it. So as you can see, this is a 3D ruler, which seems to be a popular design for many tool companies these days. If we take a look at the top of the square, you can see there's a lot going on here. You can see there's scribe holes at every 1/16 of an inch, going all the way from 1/2 of an inch up to 2.5 inches. You'll also see predefined angles at 22.5, 30, 45, 60, as well as 67.5. The scribe holes work very well, and they can even fit this 2mm pencil. But even more importantly than that, I think the main reason I got this square is because of its predetermined angles. You just don't commonly see a square with 5 predetermined angles right on the frame of it. Lastly, you'll notice 3 circles right in between those angles. What are these for? Heck if I know. Without any instructions or any description on the website, these will remain a mystery. So not bad, especially for a tool that costs less than 12 bucks, but right now they're actually going for less than $7. But let's get the opinion of our expert.
I don't know, it's okay. Kind of like a JTM hamburger.
So what now, Tay JTM?
That'll work.
There it is, TayJTM. I don't know about you, but this whole rating system is really confusing to me. Let's move on to our next one and see if we can get a more defined answer. So this next item I got was because I assumed it was a tool that nobody could screw up, but I've been wrong in the past, so let's check it out. And once again, we're dealing with a damaged box here, so hopefully this survived the trip from Chinatown. And it appears that everything's okay. If we open up the box, you can see there's two clamps here that are very similar to the clamps that come with the MicroJig Match Fit system. Let's break out one of those MicroJig clamps and see how well it compares. If we compare the two clamps, you can see the construction is almost identical. In fact, the Temu product is just a little bit larger, coming in at 6.5 inches, while the Match Fit is at 6 inches exactly. The Temu clamp has a handle in the shape of a hexagon, but isn't quite as comfortable as a MicroJig clamp that has that soft rubber grip. Now there are a couple of things that I want to test out with this clamp. The first thing is it compatible with the Match Fit system? And the second thing is, will it work on a Festool track? And unfortunately, since it doesn't have the dovetail shape, it won't work with the Match Fit system, very similar to the Festool clamps. But it will, however, easily slide into any Festool track saw track. And lastly, and probably most importantly, it will definitely work with any MFT style tabletop. And for just $11 a piece, I haven't seen a comparable clamp at this price point. But I suppose we should check in with the judge.
Kobe Bryant.
You mean like Kobe beef, like Temu?
What'd I say?
I guess that's good. Well, hopefully you're as confused as I am. Now let's check out our next item, which is another tool that I didn't think Temu would be able to screw up. And this is an item that I've wanted for quite a while now, as it's something that you can gently nudge a piece of wood into place with just a couple of taps. And it's right inside this plastic bag. It's a round rubber mallet, perfect for pounding those joints together at the very last moment. Now, a couple of impressions that I have right off the bat. The first thing is, this is a lot tinier than it looked in the pictures. And if you remember from a previous video of mine, this seems to be a common theme with these Chinese websites. If you remember, I ordered a ball peen hammer from Wish.com and I got one that would fit in the palm of my hand. Secondly, the head on this hammer is not rubber, it's straight up plastic. Hard enough plastic that you could probably dent the wood that you're pounding into place. In fact, I even took this mallet to some oak in my shop and I was able to easily dent it. So even though the price was right with this mallet, I don't think with its size and the hardness of the mallet head, I'll even feel comfortable using this with hardwoods. In fact, this is a tool that I may revisit in the near future and even turn something on my new lathe.
That's a piece of shit, and I gotta take a dump. Is this video almost over?
Sounds to me like you're giving it a Taepoo rating. And yes, the video's almost over. Only 2 more items to take a look at.
Thank God, and not Taepoo, Tay shit, like I said.
All right, Tay shit it is then. So as I said before, we only have 2 more items to take a look at. And this next item I bought solely because of the price, and it comes in this little white box. Now, many of you caught my video a couple of weeks ago where I featured my latest toy, my new jet lathe. So one thing I've come to realize about the lathe is the accessories are expensive. So I thought I'd give Temu a shot and see if I could purchase some of the accessories. And that's where this little white box comes into play. As I was looking for some replacement tips for my carbide turning tools, I had complete sticker shock. I had no idea that the tips for these tools were so expensive. In fact, if you go to some stores like Woodcraft, you can even spend as much as the tool itself for those tips. So I thought I'd give Temu a shot and I bought this entire replacement set for just a little over $18. Let's check it out. My first impression is it looks like this is a pretty decent set. You can see there's 4 of the rounder tips, both with the larger and the smaller size. There's also 2 diamond tips as well as 2 square tips. Now, one thing about the square tips is they're a little bit smaller than the one that I have installed on my tool. Now, the real test will be whether or not these tips will hold up to long-term use. But in the meantime, let's install these and see how they look. And this is where we begin to run into some issues. As you can see, I've replaced the diamond tip and the round tip without any problems. But the square tip does not even fit my tool. Even with the included hardware, there's no way I can attach this blade to my tool. And even if I was able to install it, I wouldn't be able to use it. As you can see, the blade does not even go past to where the tool ends. And that's frankly quite disappointing, as the 2 tips I was most concerned about were the round and the square tip. And in my opinion, I would have been better suited to pay a few extra bucks and just go to Amazon to make sure that I get the exact size I need. Now I'm going to use these tips on any future lathe videos that I do, so we'll be able to see how well they work in the long term. But until then, we should probably check in with the expert and see what he thinks.
That's a good old-fashioned Tay-turd right there.
You sure you want to give him a Tay-turd? I mean, half of them look pretty decent.
Half of your mom looks good, and you don't see me keeping her around.
He does have a point there. Anyway, let's move on. Well, only one more item left to look at, and this last item is something that we already talked about and I completely forgot I ordered, and it's in this white bag right here. So if you remember that beautiful cutting board that we used to cut juice grooves into at the beginning of the video with that jig, you'll remember that I mentioned some clamps. And that's exactly what we have in this last bag, a set of 2 clamps to hold this jig into place as you're making your grooves. These clamps are designed to slide right into the T-track of your jig to secure the jig directly to your cutting board. Once they're slid into place, you can tighten them down with just a twist of the knob. And these clamps have quite the extensive reach when they're fully expanded. In fact, you could do cutting boards as thick as 3 inches wide. And I really think these clamps are a great accessory and probably a necessity if you're going to get a jig like this. But I'll tell you, be very careful when ordering this jig, as oftentimes they put the picture of this jig, but they put the price of these clamps, and the clamps are actually what you're getting. So you really need to read the descriptions of what you're adding to your cart before you check out, as oftentimes they do a little bait and switch. But let's get one final opinion from our expert to see what he thinks about these clamps.
We'll give that a Tay Nightcrawler.
You lost me on that one.
You said they bait and switch, and I don't know any better bait than a Nightcrawler.
That makes sense. So that takes us through all 8 of the items that I purchased from Temu. And after looking at every single one of these tools, we had some winners, but we also had a lot of duds. So I'm not quite sure I would purchase all of these items again. And that's really the risk you take with Temu. You find some products that work well and you can buy those tools again in the future. However, along the way, you're going to purchase a lot of duds and you may end up spending just as much money. So once again, I think I'm going to stick with Amazon, as I know what I'm going to get from that company and I'm always able to return things and not have to wait a couple weeks. Well, I really appreciate you joining me today, and I once again want to thank our sponsor Exter for supporting this video. Check out the links below and use my coupon code FLINDOG to get 35% off your next purchase. Also, check out my new website, www.flindogwoodwork.com, where you can find all sorts of fun accessories like these shirts. In the meantime, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, leave a like and leave a comment. It really does help out this small woodworking channel. Until next time, take care as always.